Hello, back for more. Installment number 2 of Apostate Alex this evening. Thank you for those who are joining. This is my second video today. I don't normally do 2 streams in one day, but I was thinking about fair game and everything that's been going on recently and the earlier stream, and I thought, let's put something else out there. Let's talk a little bit more about Scientology's fair game tactics. For those of you new to my channel, my name is Alex and I am an apostate. I used to be the director of public book sales at the Church of Scientology in London, and now I speak out and call for an end to their abusive practices here on my channel and on my blog, Scientologybusiness.com. For those of you who are joining and are regulars, thank you so much for joining. Welcome back. Bok Buddy here is saying, Alex for the win, 2 in 1 day. Just read your great article. Hit them with the facts. Love the punitive defense reference. Facts, exactly. T per Scientology audit is here. Hi T, thanks for joining. Kaz is here. Kirby's mum, hi Alex, hi chat, and of course Educom. I'm here for some cult fair game chat. Yeah, exactly. And I thought when it comes to fair game and Scientology's policies, let's just look at what the policy actually is. So this video is directed towards journalists, it's directed towards government officials, politicians, it is directed towards anybody who is interested in learning about how Scientology deals with critics and former members such as myself. You can be sure that any person I've ever spoken to about Scientology in regards to being a journalist or a government official, politician, you can be sure Scientology would have sent them a barrage of information attacking me and trying to dead agent me, which means essentially criticize and nullify that person by discrediting them. So let's have a look at what the actual policies themselves say, and let's just read through this. So here is the article that I posted on my blog, Scientologybusiness.com. The link is in the description if you want to read along. The Church of Scientology have a well-documented history of harassing and intimidating former members and critics through its policy they call fair game. Although Scientology claims the policy was revoked years ago, it dictates how to handle those who it perceives as enemies, suppressive people, and remains unchanged to this day. In these excerpts of Scientology policies, you can read for yourself how Scientology handles investigations, what it thinks of government officials, and how it justifies its attacks on those who challenge their status quo. The Office of Special Affairs, OSA, is the department responsible for attacking critics, and their activities are governed by OSA network orders, which are based on L. Ron Hubbard's writings. You can find the PDF of all of the OSA network orders at the bottom of this article. Scientology harassment tactics are also covered extensively in books such as Fair Game by Australian journalist Steve Kinane, Scientology, The Church of Fear by BBC Panorama journalist John Sweeney, A Billion Years by former OSA boss himself Mike Rinder, and in numerous documentaries and TV shows including Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, and Going Clear, Scientology in the Prison of Belief, which was Alex Gibney based on Lawrence Wright's book. And I want to throw in here as well that you can also look at the UK government's Foster report of the 1971, I think it was, or was it 1979? I'm pretty sure it was 1971. The government commissioned an inquiry into Scientology's practices and reviewed fair game and its harassment and intimidation of critics and former members, as well as the 1986-88. I might have the year wrong, but it was in the 80s. The High Court judge, Lord Justice Leahy, who also looked at Scientology's tactics and ruled that Scientology is a dangerous, harmful movement. Let's also not forget that the Charity Commission here in the UK rejected Scientology in 1999 and concluded that it does not exist for the public benefit. All of those rulings contain references to fair game, and here are the references to Scientology's policies themselves, written by the founder. So the words of L. Ron Hubbard speak for themselves, and here they are. So, OSA Network Order 7, the mechanisms of attack and defense. This was written on the 21st of October 1963. You can defend to a certain degree, and you have to defend to a certain degree, but use 75% of your energies to attack, and you will always win. Find a weak spot and attack it. Attack expertly and attacked perfectly, and don't flub with the attack. Always put your attention on the attack, and you win every time. HCO stands for Hubbard Communications Office. So this is the HCO policy letter titled Legal, Tax, Accountant and Solicitor, Male and Legal Officer written on the 3rd of February 1966. Now this policy is specifically about the person who holds that post in the org. So there is a section on the Scientology org board which deals with legal, tax, accountancy, solicitors, male, legal officer. There is one person whose job it is to deal with all of those things, and this policy is about that person's job and what they are supposed to do in their role. The purpose of the legal officer is to help LRH, L. Ron Hubbard, handle every legal, government, suit, accounting, and tax contact or action for the organization and by himself or employed representative, to protect the organization and its people from harm, and to bring the greatest possible confusion and loss to its enemies. Now, that's where Scientology policy is really crucial to actually read every single word, because the first bit, yeah, it makes sense to have someone in an organization that deals with legal matters, government issues, lawsuits, accounting, tax, all of those things. There's nothing wrong with having a legal officer to deal with those things. But the key point here is it's a key, crucial part of the role to bring the greatest possible confusion and loss to its enemies. And anybody that is investigating Scientology is considered an enemy. So if you are somebody, for example, a police officer or someone investigating Scientology, the legal officer at the Church of Scientology will be responsible for causing you the greatest deal of confusion and loss, whilst also replying to your letters and answering your queries on behalf of the church. Now, this policy letter is called Attacks on Scientology, and it was written on the 25th of February 1966. And L. Ron Hubbard spells out the correct procedure on how to handle attacks to Scientology. The correct procedure is 1. Spot who is attacking us. 2. Start investigating them promptly for felonies or worse, using our own professionals, not outside agencies. 3. Double curve our reply by saying we welcome an investigation of them. 4. Start feeding lurid blood, sex, crime, and actual evidence on the attackers to the press. So here we have Hubbard saying, anybody that's attacking Scientology, you have to do these 4 things. You have to find out who it is that's attacking them. You have to investigate them for crimes. Then you have to, in response to whatever they're attacking you with, you have to say you welcome an investigation into this person because of their crimes. And number 4, start feeding false information to the press about the person who is attacking Scientology. And that whole point is called dead agenting, essentially nullifying critics by making them come across as discreditable or biased or whatever, so that their opinions don't matter in the eyes of the press. Now, talking of the press, this is what L. Ron Hubbard has to say about journalists. This is from HCO Policy Letter, Admin Know-How, PTS Sections, Personnel and Execs. Now, PTS stands for Potential Trouble Source. That means somebody who is connected to a suppressive person or an enemy of the church. It was written on Boxing Day, 26th of December, 1966, and it says this: there are no good reporters. There are no good government or SP, suppressive person, group agents. The longer you try to be nice, the worse off you will be. And the sooner one learns this, the happier he will be. Some staff member in such contact points in the org should be the only one who handles, and all other staff should be given chits for talking to such a person. Chits basically just means, you know, a telling off. Anybody, so if there's an enemy of the church that's speaking to someone in Scientology, for example, a lawsuit, or you know, a journalist or something is investigating Scientology and they've contacted the media department for a comment or a query, the person who's responding to that journalist or that attacker, that critic, there is one person who deals with that, and that's the only person that is permitted to speak to the enemy, the SP, the journalist. Anybody else that works for Scientology that speaks to the journalist has to be handed an ethics chit, basically a telling off. They are going to be punished for speaking to the enemy, the critic. They are only allowed to speak to one person. Staff members of a unit that could go PTS, i.e., connected to a suppressive person like a journalist, must be ordered to walk off without a word whenever such an agent shows up. So, if a journalist rocks up at St. Hill, Scientology's UK headquarters, or London Org, where I used to work, someone walks up to the reception desk and says, "Hi, I'm a journalist." That person has to immediately call the Office of Special Affairs and simply walk away. They're not allowed to engage in any communication whatsoever with any critics. The staff personnel who handles should point at the agent if other staff is about and say some keyword like "this is a government man," at which point all other staff in the unit turns its back or pointedly walks off. When such agents act or sound very suppressive, get them investigated, find the scandal, and attack. It is a fortunate truth that such people also have crimes in their background that can be found, find, and expose them. In all the history of Scientology, no interviewing reporter ever helped. They all meant the worse when they acted their best, and we were always sorry to have ever spoken to them. Even if the reporter is all right, his newspaper isn't and will twist his story. We have done best when we have blocked off reporters and worst when we've been nice. So the moral is a person from an SP group will eventually make an org or some part of it PTS regardless of the agent's conduct. So what L. Ron Hubbard here is saying is that even if a journalist means well and approaches a story with an open mind and fairly assessing everything Scientology has got to say, the publication that journalist works for has got crimes in its past and will twist the story. And so therefore, the only thing you should do is just attack that person, regardless of how well-meaning they are. In this policy letter called Creating Confusion with the Enemy, which was written on the 3rd of September 1967, L. Ron Hubbard writes, "You can throw the enemy off base by getting them so that they do not believe their own intelligence agents. They will not believe their own intelligence agents because they are sending them in too many conflicting reports, so they don't know what to believe." So the point here is to infiltrate an organization that is investigating Scientology and submit lots of different reports, whether they're factual or not, just to confuse the enemy line. So that if you're a reporter and you say, "Hey, I'm writing on this, that, and the other," you are sending that reporter multiple different reports that muddy the waters. So it kind of confuses the journalists so that they don't know really what they're looking for anymore because they've received so much information and volume from Scientology. The same goes for investigations in terms of law enforcement. If a police officer rocks up and says he's investigating Scientology for human trafficking or for child SA or something like that, the trick is to then report to that officer a number of other different crimes that are not to do with Scientology, where they are the victim, so that that officer starts investigating those things and drops the case against Scientology. That is the tactic. Salty Beach Girl Laurie here says, "Evening all, finally able to pop in on a live. Hope all is well with my favourite UK ginger SP. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining and good to see you here after a long while." D. Thompson says, "Morning, Alex and chat. I see that the lack of humanity is still evident from a person long dead. Is there no chance of evolution from this organization?" Now, that's a very good question. I think it's important to talk about the fact that policy cannot change in Scientology. If you read KSW, which is Keeping Scientology Working, the most important policy in Scientology, it clearly states that Scientology will work 100% of the time if it's applied correctly. And it says that you cannot change what L. Ron Hubbard wrote. That is called verbal tech, or it's called squirreling if you change what he wrote. So in terms of whether the organization itself can change or evolve, if you actually follow L. Ron Hubbard policy, the answer is no, because you have to do what L. Ron Hubbard said. Even if you think it's wrong, even if it's going to result in something negative like bad press for Scientology, If L. Ron Hubbard said it, you have to do it. And there is no scope within the organization for anything to be changed like that. Now, of course, they will say that they've changed things. Prime example is OSA, the Office of Special Affairs. Initially, it was called the Guardian's Office. The Guardian's Office was then convicted on, or a number of people who worked for the Guardian's Office were convicted for the largest infiltration of the US government in its history. Thousands of Scientology agents were placed in government positions, not just the US government, but the UK and others in Europe too, with the whole point of infiltrating these governments. When this was found out, L. Ron Hubbard's own wife, Mary Sue, went to prison for what was called Operation Snow White, or the Snow White Project. In response to that, L. Ron Hubbard wrote that the Guardian's Office was disbanded, it no longer exists, he never approved of it, and so it no longer exists, and they're no longer doing these horrible things. However, a new thing came up called the Office of Special Affairs, which replaced the Guardian's Office and continued doing exactly the same things. So the way Scientology operates doesn't change, but the name, the title, the name of the group, whatever, does change, so that they can put hand on heart and say the Guardian's Office doesn't exist anymore, because it technically doesn't. But the Office of Special Affairs has now assumed that responsibility and continues to do Scientology's dirty tricks. So in answer to your question, is there no chance of evolution from this organization? Look, we can hope, but unfortunately it's baked into the policies, and this is what we're reading. This policy cannot be changed if you follow Scientology scripture to the word, to the letter. So creating conflict with the enemy. We just read that one. Lovely. This policy letter is called Those Who Attack Scientology, 28th of May, 1968. And L. Ron Hubbard writes, those who attack Scientology commonly have the most unsavory backgrounds you ever heard of. So our usual 1-2 is to find out who is giving the orders and then find out what his criminal past is. And then we do it rather noisily so that it becomes known that we know, and he shuts up. That is usually the modus operandi. So this is what is called a noisy investigation. If you are speaking out about Scientology, they want you to know that you are being followed. They want you to know you are being investigated, because they want to scare you and intimidate you into silence. They don't hire covert agents to hide in the bushes and follow you without you noticing. They do a noisy investigation so that you feel intimidated, so that you stop doing what you're doing, because you're scared they're going to find something out about you. If we could be effective enough to stop parliaments in their tracks, we should also be effective enough to point parliaments in another direction. If we can stop them attacking us, we can certainly turn them around and point them some other way. So it's less ambitious than it looks, much less ambitious. So here L. Ron Hubbard is talking about his grand goals of making a Scientology world. He is talking about making politicians and the government turn the other way through his principles and through his tactics. Edward Welty, Alex, I always find your exposure of Scientology fascinating and shocking. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you. And here, look, I'm not exposing anything. I'm just reading L. Ron Hubbard's own words here, Scientology's own policies. They are freely available on the internet, and I think they are the ones that have exposed themselves. Bok Buddy, no one can change Hubbard's policies except Apple Box Boy, of course. Fundraising and ideologue for a few examples. Yeah, so what Bok Buddy here is talking about is David Miscavige, who is the current leader of the Church of Scientology. Miscavige has been at the helm of Scientology longer than L. Ron Hubbard ever was, because L. Ron Hubbard died in 1986. Miscavige has been in charge of Scientology longer than Hubbard was, and that's something that's important to note. Now, a lot of ex-Scientologists, especially those in the free zone who practice Scientology independently of the church itself, claim that David Miscavige changed a lot of the policies, but he claimed that what he'd actually done is found out that L. Ron Hubbard said something and it was transcribed incorrectly, or they lost a document that he's now found. So he still claims that it's L. Ron Hubbard's own writings or his own words, even if it's something that he's made up or changed himself. But yes, no one can change Hubbard's policy, and that's why he didn't just come out and say, this is the new policy that I've written. He came out and said, this is what Hubbard actually wrote, and we've been wrong all this time because the policy is what Hubbard says goes. Bok buddy, noisy investigation like breaking doors. Exactly, 100%. And that is why I believe my front door being smashed in the other day is an attack from Scientology, because of these policies that we are looking at right here. The next policy is confidential. It's called Rundown on Intelligence. It was written on the 20th of September 1968. And L. Ron Hubbard here says, we have two main cycles as far as investigations go. The first is, 1, some SP near an outer org starts attacking Scientology. 2, the investigations officer in that area cables or telexes his senior at international level and starts investigating the person behind the attack. 3, the int level senior acts, which means acknowledges, the report and expects to see regular reports on the SP being investigated. Number 4, a file is opened in both the outer org and int level, and the case goes on the CIC, which stands for Combat Information Center, board as a project. 5, the investigation is carried on until the crimes are found and it is handed over to prosecutions to get the SP put in a government accommodation, or the SP gets scared and shuts up and the int level senior directs the case to be dropped. So when people are asking how the fair game is being manifested against me and how it works, this is the policy that they are following. So I'm based here in the UK. The nearest org is London org, and then you have St Hill, which is the UK headquarters down in Sussex. So as soon as I came onto the scene and started protesting and started attacking Scientology's abuses, note, I don't attack Scientology as an organization or as a so-called religious group. I'm simply attacking their abusive and harmful practices. I'm calling for an end to the abuse inside the organization, not calling for an end to their freedom of religion or freedom of belief. But nonetheless, they deem me an attacker. So OSA, the Office of Special Affairs down at St Hill, have to immediately report to the International Office of Special Affairs, Karen, who is based, I'm not going to say her surname so that I don't get a privacy strike, because that keeps happening, but their chief spokesperson of the Church of Scientology International, based over in LA, is somebody called Karen, and she would have received a report from St Hill, and she would have ordered an investigation to happen and then requires a regular update on that investigation. And that will be ongoing, basically, until I shut up or get put in a government institution. That is what the policy states. That's what it says here in L. Ron Hubbard's own words. The next policy letter is called Policies on Sources of Trouble. In the matter of reporters, etc., it is not worthwhile to give them any time contrary to popular belief. They are given their story before they leave their editorial rooms, and you only strengthen what they have to say by saying anything. So L. Ron Hubbard clearly doesn't think very highly of reporters, and my suspicion is because reporters don't think Scientology because they expose Scientology's crimes. In this highly confidential briefing called Intelligence Filing, which was the 21st of July, 1973, L. Ron Hubbard tells us exactly what he thinks about government officials. No government bum ever acts on his own initiative. Governments today are simply like prostitutes. They are used. So, if you are a government official, perhaps a councillor at East Grinstead Town Council, or perhaps a local politician at Mid Sussex District Council dealing with the Public Spaces Protection Order that Scientology have filed in an attempt to ban protesting outside St Hill. Perhaps you are the local member of parliament or somebody who works for the council, not necessarily a politician, but an officer, somebody employed by the council. You are dealing with Scientology, and they are being oh so nice to you because they are trying to woo you into giving them what they want. However, Scientology's policy explicitly states that you are a bum and you are not acting on your own initiative. This is what the policy states. This is what they really think of you, even though they're being nice to your face. I'll read it again. No government bum ever acts on his own initiative. Governments today are simply like prostitutes. They are used. So in Scientology's dealings with government officials, dealing with politicians, dealing with, East Grinstead Town Council, it is simply because they want to use you and your position. They don't actually want to benefit or help the local community in any way. This is the policy that L. Ron Hubbard wrote that remains unchanged and in force to this very day. D. Thompson here says, it's astounding to me how vicious and just downright heartless the leaders of this alleged church are, considering they claim to be doing good. It makes me sick to think they still exist. Absolutely. Xenuite says, Alex, do you think people who stay in now are just hardcore Scientologists? Dissonance eventually does crack. Second gens don't count in this question. Well, I think that's really difficult to answer because the majority of people in Scientology these days are second or third generation. So you can't really separate the two. I mean, there are people who are first generation that have joined Scientology, of course, but even David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, is a second generation Scientologist. He was brought up in Scientology. Scientology is an aging population, and the people who are now at the highest levels are people who were raised and who have raised their children in Scientology. So in terms of the people who stay now, it's going to be a mixture of those who are, yes, hardcore believers in Scientology, but it's also going to be people who are trapped, people whose whole families and whole lives and whole existences exists within Scientology. If you have been raised in Scientology, your family are Scientologists, and you decide this isn't for me, I want to leave, you are threatened with disconnection and potentially punishment. So if you leave and speak out, you have to leave everything. You're no longer allowed to communicate or talk to family members, your spouse, your children, because you will be considered an enemy. So I believe a lot of people in Scientology are still Scientologists because they feel trapped and unable to leave, because if they do leave, they have to lose everything. And that's why it's important we as a community have to provide as much support as we can to these people and say, hey, look, if you leave, it's going to be okay. There is a community of people here to help you get set up, to land on your feet. And there's resources like the Aftermath Foundation that exist to help you do that. There are people out here who genuinely care about you and want to see you do well in life. And it is possible to be happy and do well in life outside of the organization that is the Church of Scientology. You don't have to completely give up your belief system if you don't want to. Nobody's going to try and convince you to leave. It's your decision, and you can walk away with as many or as few beliefs as you want to with regard to L. Ron Hubbard's technology. But please understand that if you feel trapped, the answer is to walk away if you want to. You are able to walk away. You can do that, and there are people here that will help you do it if you want to. All right, let's carry on. Confidential PR Series 24, Handling Hostile Contacts / Dead Agenting. This was L. Ron Hubbard on the 30th of May, 1974. If there will be a long-term threat, you are to immediately evaluate and originate a black PR campaign. Black PR basically just means black propaganda, bad news, lies, and attacks. So you are to create a black PR campaign to destroy the person's repute and to discredit them so thoroughly that they will be ostracized. So again, linking it back to my personal case of having fair game at the moment, their goal is to ostracize me from the community, ostracize me from all of the other ex-Scientologists, ostracize every single person speaking out so that they're separate from the group, because we are stronger when we work together as a group of people. So what they want to do is break that group apart so that it's one person versus another. So you create this campaign of lies, of misinformation, of half-truths, of twisted, manipulated words, so that that person is ostracized from the group, and therefore they have no reputation left and they have no reliability, and they are easier therefore to dismiss as attackers. That is what dead agenting is, and that is what Scientology does to every single person it deems a suppressive person, an enemy of the church. They do this in online communities here on YouTube. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen it on the ex-Scientology message board, I believe, and on alt.religion/Scientology, which was the message board before that. We see it in the press. Anytime anybody ever speaks out about Scientology in the media, Scientology send a lengthy response with a number of accusations and statements about how this person shouldn't be trusted or listened to because of X, Y, and Z. And the reason Scientology do that is to distract the attention away from them and to destroy the person's repute, sorry. It says here, I'll read it again. If there will be a long-term threat, i.e. someone speaking out, like me, you are to immediately evaluate and create a black PR campaign to destroy the person's repute and to discredit them so thoroughly that they will be ostracized. So it's not just make up a couple of lies about this person or make them seem like they're not trustworthy or makes them seem like they're just someone who's, got an axe to grind. No, 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 no. This goes one step further. Create a campaign to destroy that person's repute so that they are ostracized. People just think of them as you are so like off the off the beaten track. You are down a rabbit hole. You are completely nuts and you don't know what you're talking about. And you are so not somebody that should be listened to that we're not even going to bother. That's what Scientology want to do. And the policy here says is to create a campaign to do that to anybody that it considers a long-term threat. Now, long-term threat also, I just want to say, look, they're not going to do this for somebody who leaves Scientology and speaks out once on YouTube or somebody who attends a protest once or twice, because they are not considered by Scientology a long-term threat. They will attack you, they will come after you, but the extent to which they do so will depend on how much of a threat Scientology deem you to be. If they think that you are someone that is not going to go anywhere, that's going to stick around for a long time, and you are clearly making tracks, making headway in seeking justice and getting government officials to listen, you are considered a long-term threat. At which point they start implementing a black PR campaign in order to destroy your reputation. And this is where I find myself today and why I'm sharing these policies so that journalists, so that government officials, so that my followers and subscribers can clearly see in Scientology's own words exactly what they are doing to me and to other people who are speaking out. I'm not the only person that this has happened to. I'm one of many, and I'm only just at the start of this. There are people who have been dealing with this for decades because of Scientology's policies and because they've decided to speak out. One of my favorite quotes of all time, OSA Network Order 110, which was published on 14th of October 1988, says, "Put them on trial, not us." Put them on trial, not us. Now, this was published in 1988. L. Ron Hubbard died in 1986. So this was published after his death, but it is taken from a lecture or from I think it's from a tape, something that he said while he was still alive. And it's being published as an OSA network order after his death. This is Darvo at its finest. Whatever anyone says about Scientology, whatever the attack is, doesn't matter. Put them on trial. So if you reach out and say, I was abused by Scientology, Scientology's policy is to make you the enemy. Turn it around. It's not us, it's you. It's Darvo, nothing but. T. Thompson says, oh my God, he sounds like a Bond villain. Yeah, exactly. Deanna Ross here. Hi, Deanna. Thank you so much. Love that you are educating the community about fair game. It is very real. Yeah, 100%. I have my door kicked in. There's a currently ongoing campaign. If you look at the Stand League, for example, Scientology's hate website and group of hate spreaders on social media, their Twitter page for the last 3 weeks has exclusively consisted of tweets attacking me and nobody else. They've stopped attacking Leah Remini on this account, at least for the last 3 weeks. That shows that they are implementing fair game. Power lies to paralyze. Hi, Alex. Hi, everybody. F you, oh sir. Thank you so much for joining. And hi, good to see you again. AT Chick, hey from the future in Thailand. It's almost 8 a.m. Wednesday here. Well, good morning, and I hope you're enjoying a nice cup of coffee on the beach or wherever you are in Thailand. I'm very jealous, and I'm sure the weather is a lot better than it is here in the UK. So put them on trial, not us. All right, let's carry on. There's only a few more. So this is OSA Network Order 106 called Legal Strategy, which again published 22nd of September 1988. The why of all this is that lawyers delay and prolong in order to make money. Therefore, it can be made too expensive for them to continue a case against us. They will drop it. Not only that, they won't start one in the first place. The strategy could be called punitive defense. The word would get around the mighty quick. Don't tangle with or sue Scientology. It just buys so much trouble and expense. We can't face it. Now, this is where Scientology have been somewhat successful, especially in the realm of journalism. When journalists want to write about Scientology, they do so knowing that Scientology are going to send them files and kilograms of paperwork, attacking them, discrediting them, giving them threats of lawsuits and litigation, all with the idea of suppressing the article and stopping the journalists, scaring them from publishing anything about Scientology. Now, Scientology here is saying, L. Ron Hubbard's own words, are the point of this whole legal litigation thing is simply to overwhelm and scare people into speaking about Scientology. And they want to create a reputation that says, don't tangle with or sue Scientology. It just buys so much trouble and expense, we can't face it. That is the reputation Scientology have at the moment, especially among journalists. I've spoken to many journalists over the last 2 years who just simply won't touch the Scientology story or angle because they know it comes with a lot of trouble. Now, it's also important to note it's Scientology policy to threaten to sue, not to actually sue. And this is the reason why, because they want to bankrupt you. They want to get you tied up in litigation, in writing replies to lawyers and paying expensive legal fees so that you eventually give up and say it's not worth my time or my money. That is the only reason Scientology engage in litigation like this and why they send such lengthy replies to any journalist that is covering Scientology. It is bully tactics, and it's bully tactics in L. Ron Hubbard's own words. It says here, punitive defense. It's saying anything that you say about us, any attacks, we're not just going to defend ourselves, we're going to punish you for attacking us. Punitive defense. Okay, OSA Network Order 113, Handling Duped Litigants, 22nd of September 1988. The main object is to nullify such suits. A second object is to make every person in the enemy camp an enemy of every other person in that camp. And the third object is to pave the way for a multi-million-dollar barrage of future suits to clean up the name of Scientology. So again, we talked here about put them on trial, not us. This is further expanding on that. The enemy camp means groups of SPs, critics, people who are speaking out against Scientology on YouTube, for example, nowadays. And the whole purpose of Scientology's Office of Special Affairs when it comes to these groups is to make the enemy an enemy of everybody else in the group. Turn them against each other so they're fighting amongst themselves, because then they will be distracted and they will be fighting with each other rather than with Scientology. It is spelled out in clear black and white here what the policy is. Make every person in the enemy camp an enemy of every other person in the camp. And then the third object to pave the way for a multi-million-dollar barrage of future suits. Again, it's using that bully tactic to try and threaten people with lawsuits and with expense so that they don't speak out about Scientology. This is bullying at its finest. Buddy here, written policies governing the most ethical group of people. Yeah, exactly. Scientology claim to be the most ethical people on planet Earth. They believe their system of ethics is more important and a better way of dealing with life than even the laws that govern the United Kingdom, the United States, the countries in which they are operating. They claim to be the most ethical people on planet Earth. And I don't know about you, but these policies don't sound very ethical to me. To create a barrage of lawsuits and criticize and attack its enemies and get them fighting with one another. All right, and finally, this is the last one of this article, and I thought this was a good one to end it on. L. Ron Hubbard, HCO policy letter called LRH Relationships to Orgs, 4th of January, 1966. Someday let me start that again. Somebody someday will say this is illegal. By then, be sure the orgs say what is legal or not. I will read that again in L. Ron Hubbard's own words. Somebody someday will say this is illegal. By then, be sure the orgs say what is legal or not. L. Ron Hubbard here is admitting that he knows one day people will say that Scientology are engaging in illegal activities. And he is saying the number one thing that you need to do as a Scientologist is when that happens, make sure that Scientology are the ones dictating what is legal and what isn't. Scientology's goal is to infiltrate government agencies. Scientology's goal is to stifle and silence critics and former members. It is to intimidate people into silence. And while they're doing that, infiltrate the government so that eventually they have a powerful person in a position of authority who is sympathetic, at least, to Scientology, so that Scientology are able to completely shut up and shut down all criticism against it. This is how Scientology have been able to carry on with its harmful and abusive practices for so long. In the 1970s, the Foster Report, which was a government inquiry here in the UK, looked at all of the evidence and ruled that Scientology is a psychotherapy and Scientology should be looked at very carefully and that it is harmful to the mental health of its practitioners. In the 1980s, a High Court judge ruled that Scientology is socially obnoxious, it is dangerous and harmful, especially to children. It brainwashes people, according to this judge. In 1999, the Charity Commission ruled that Scientology does not benefit the public. And yet, Scientology still exists to this very day and is continuing to attack and intimidate and harass and scare critics such as myself into silence. Unfortunately, Scientology, it's not going to work. And all I'm going to do is continue sharing the words of your own founder so that the world can see exactly how and why you are operating. So if you see something about me online, if you read Scientology's hate website, be my guest, but just have this in the back of your mind when you read it. And just know that Scientology are not there to help people or encourage the community to grow or become together or collaborate. Scientology exists to attack its critics, shut down and stifle free speech and criticism, and scare people and intimidate them into silence. And that is why I'm going to continue fighting to try and give a voice to those who have been silenced. Too many people have been scared into silence because of Scientology's bully tactics. Too many people are too afraid to speak out. Too many people are too scared to go to law enforcement and put their hands up, especially in the public realm, and say, I've been abused or harmed by Scientology. And I believe that that has happened for too long. And that is why I will continue doing what I can to give those people a voice. And I will continue fighting hard here in the UK. So guys, if you want to support my activism and what I'm doing, please consider buying me a coffee. There's a link in the description down below. You can also use PayPal. All of that money goes back into me fighting Scientology's abusive practices, and it does really go a long way. You can also support the channel by liking the video, giving it a thumbs up, When the live stream is over, leave a comment underneath the video. That helps push this video out to more people, and hopefully we can start to see a little bit of change here in the UK. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you on the next one.